Games, board games. We might be talking about board games and crowdfunding, but we're not going to shout. It has affected Jess and me in many ways emotionally, and we might be sad or happy. It's a day to day, it affects how we be. And we talk about how to manage this. We talk about how to avoid despair after bliss. We will talk about all sorts of things after I have finished this singing. Board games and crowdfunding projects is what we're talking about. Handling the emotions after Kickstarter projects, and I'm not gonna shout. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever it is, wherever you are. It is 10 a.m. UK time. It's time for another Bezzy Beats and Board Game Bladder with a special guest, Jess Metheringham.
Hello, hello, hello. Lovely to see everybody.
How are you today, Jess?
Well, I am feeling a little bit down, but that is mainly because I'm recovering from COVID. So I got COVID at Aircon. Yeah. And
wow.
I'm still positive, but feeling absolutely normal. So it's all good.
Well, I'm glad that you're recovering at least. And how is your family? Because you live with other people and
they don't seem to
you've
have
got
got
lots
it.
of interactions.
They don't seem to have got it, but yeah. So about a month ago, just over a month ago, my partner got it, but our children didn't. And this time, they haven't got it again. He hasn't got it again either. So it was clearly just my turn.
Huh. That's interesting. And hello, Rob, who says, hi, Jess and Bez. Oh, Jez and Bez. Sure, we can be Jez and Bez for you. I hope the state of mind is also positive. Yes, how is your state of mind? Because without going into it too much, that is the main topic. So it is 578, and it's all about, the emotional impact. How are we doing?
Yeah. So I don't know how you're doing, Jez. Hang on, you're Jez now, aren't you? You're Jez instead of anyway. Let's not go down that. Yeah. So I'm definitely feeling that my sort of how I'm feeling emotionally is definitely linked to how that little graph on the Kickstarter does. I definitely find that when it goes up a lot, then I feel really, really impressed. Sometimes at the moment, I just feel really confused. Because the fact is that a lot of people talk about how, you're likely to get more backers on this day or fewer backers on that day, and how, weekends are bad for backers or, whatever. And I'm thinking, do I have a completely different audience to the average board game? You probably have a similar thing, Bez, where, I don't know, maybe the people who say this are just making it up. I'm never quite sure.
No one knows everything. And the other thing is that with statistics, if you've got 10,000 backers, then it's probably likely to follow the trend almost exactly because you've got so many data points. But if you're getting, like I am currently getting less than 10 new backers every day, and it's still, something, it's still a lot more than if we go back to 2014, my first ever Kickstarter. So I do have to acknowledge, yes, it has gone on, and it is currently my third biggest Kickstarter, and I've run quite a few, and by the end, I expect it to be my second biggest Kickstarter, a game about wee whimsical creatures and trying to identify them after someone makes noises. For whatever reason, that did a lot better, like so much better. And I don't know why that is, and I could tell it going in. And it kind of annoys me when people say, oh, no, you don't know, you don't be so negative. And I say, hey, at this point, my other Kickstarter had 200 people backing it. This one had about 50 people following it. And so it's likely that this will do, a lot less well. But having said that, it is running for longer, so it's not going to be a quarter of the people. Maybe it'll be half as many people.
Mm-hmm.
And people say, "Oh, you don't know, Bez." I mean, come on, give me some respect. I don't. No one knows everything for sure, but. And Rob asks, how am I calculating that? I calculate it's always by number of backers, because the total pledged for me, yes, it really matters financially. If every Kickstarter I did was to the scale of a game about wee whimsical creatures trying to identify them after some makes noises, then I would make like a £2,000 profit, and then at £3,000, and I'd be able to pay. I used some of that money for Dina to thank her for the marketing. Some of that money is spent on getting Chris to join in. Some of that money was spent on doing another print run in another country and sending it to Essen, but that didn't actually pay for itself. So that was arguably almost certainly a bad financial decision, but we'll see how it goes in long term. There's still time. But I'm able to use that money to keep operational costs going, because it is not just me at this point, and it's not just me needing to pay for food and rent. It's also me hoping to pay Chris so that they can do stuff and help. But yeah, anyway, the point is, do you understand why I kind of get annoyed when people say, "Oh, it might not be so bad"?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just making some little notes, to come back to, because I'm like, Bez was saying so much exciting stuff, so much interesting stuff, because I think there's something about, when you say that you know something, because people often say, well, you don't know that. And you're like, well, no, I don't know anything, but I can make a really good educated guess, based on this and that. And some of it is things which are so small, many little things together, which, it's quite hard to actually define what it is you're truly talking about. You can say, well, hang on, but it was, but this was this and this was this, and it's all those little factors, and those little factors together can make huge differences. There's that story that people always tell about the Olympic cycling team, and how the Olympic cycling team, the British Olympic cycling team, got better and better and better, and it wasn't because they were doing one big thing. It was because the coaches were looking at every little tiny thing, and they had hundreds of tiny little things, and they basically took the bikes apart and they remodeled them, and they were like, well, okay, these, this tiny little thing, it's not going to make much of a difference, but we'll make it perfect anyway. And this tiny little thing, that's not going to make much of a difference, but we'll make it perfect anyway. And so it's all those titchy tiny little things that add up, and sometimes when you're, absolutely, marginal improvements. That's what I'm talking about. That's a good way of articulating it. But when you're running something like a Kickstarter, then, certainly at the level that we're running it at, then we don't have huge teams who are looking at all those marginal improvements. And we don't have huge teams who are going out and going, okay, right, this ad did this and this ad did that, and we're going to tweak that and tweak that. But we do have a real sense of how it works. And quite often it's that kind of combined marginal improvements. Well, that word doesn't quite fit now, but
I get what you're saying. Like, you understand from all these tiny bits, you get a sense. And for someone to say, hey, don't worry, it could be better, that's kind of saying you don't know what you're doing. And hey, there's a lot that I don't know. I'm willing to hold up my hands and say there's a lot I could improve about what I'm doing, but I would like to think that I have some sense of how a Kickstarter is going to go before it even launches at this point. And a quick hello to everyone who's suddenly come in. Hello, Yoda. It was lovely to see you at Terracon. And even though I don't know if we even actually got to share a word. Like, I think I waved, and then I was busy, and then he wandered off, and then he came back right at the end. Then I finished talking to someone else, and then I ran after you. but like that was a minute after you'd gone, and then, but no, it was good to actually see you and also know who you are. So thank you for coming over. Even that was definitely appreciated. Hello, Josie. It's lovely to see you. And hello, Games by Manuel. It is lovely to see all of you. Josie says, the tiny improvements reminds me of Star Trek engineering, improving efficiency by 0.01%.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, so much love to you. And Rob says, I think the people who know everything about Kickstarters are mostly people who have just read Jamie Stegmaier's blog posts and take it all as gospel. Even the bits that Jamie has since said are no longer true. I don't think it's just those people. I think it's also sometimes well-intentioned people who think, oh, you're being sad and I want to support them. Because it's that kind of thing of, oh, it could all work out. Like sometimes things are rubbish. And, you know, sometimes it's not like things are rubbish for me. You know, things are okay. But sometimes things aren't brilliant. And you've got to accept that. And there's a sort of toxic positivity. I don't know if you've ever found this when people say, when you're actually a bit down about something and someone says, oh, and they're always trying to look for the silver lining. And really what you want to just is, oh, that's a shame. Or, yeah, and
there's always times like that. You know, there are times when, because of course different people react differently to different things. That's a total, tautology there, I suppose. Doesn't necessarily need to be said. Of course, everybody does. Of course, everyone does. But, when you've got something like this, then it's important to remember that, and to say, oh, hang on, some people do really want a lot of positivity, but there are quite a lot of other people who just need a little bit of space to go, okay, that bit was a bit rubbish. Can we not do that bit? Or, let's just take a moment to be like, oh, well, let's go do something else or something. Though actually, I haven't found Kickstarters to be particularly like that, but there is that toxic positivity that seeps in from other places.
Mainly from friends who wanted to be well-intentioned, maybe people who didn't understand that's just their nature. But we are just in the preamble, so let's get to the first bit and talk about recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights. So recent highlights, what have you been up to? What have you achieved? And what are some things that have happened to you? Let's start off talking specifically about yesterday. I put some drawings that I did yesterday morning over here. Some people might have seen before.
Radishes or beetroots?
Yeah, these are radishes. They are radishes, which I still struggle to tell the difference in the drawing, I must admit. But yeah, I think
it's partly colour. It's colour and size. So if you've got a black and white drawing, then it can be quite difficult to tell the colour and the size.
Yeah, the leaves are very similar on both of them. But then I started doing some of them to try and fool people into thinking for just half a second, hey, this might be a creature. So this is like, it's meant to be a 2-eyed, 6-winged tail creature, if you can.
I love it.
I
can completely see. Oh, that one's even worse, Beth. Worse in a really good sense, obviously.
It gets even worse. And so this one is a bunch of radishes as well.
Last one seems a little bit deceptive to me. That might be going a bit too far, but maybe that could be like an extra.
No. I am going even further. You've not seen anything yet. So remember, as long as it's inanimate objects, it's as a vegetable card. One person did a backer thing, and they want me to draw some peppers and monocle. So here are peppers and monocle, and finally. We have a stuffed toy.
Oh, brilliant.
So for the radish deck, it is going to be much, much harder. And I'm going to draw at least 2 more stuffed toys. I'm going to draw 1 more for like Free Eyes where things are sticking out. But yeah, I'm also going to have some other random objects. That is what's the main bulk of work that I did. I did some social media stuff. I did some posting, sent off review copies of this, but also a game about drawing creatures, complimenting the drawings and complimenting the compliments. And I had what I'm going to call a short holiday from about 3 o'clock. I said 4 o'clock, maybe. It was maybe even 5 o'clock at this point. I said, I'm going to go on holiday for at least 2 hours. And
Yay!
so I went on, I wandered through the park, I wandered all around the pond, I wandered places that I've never been before. Then I went into the library and I read a comic for half an hour. And then I wandered back, I checked my Kickstarter, of course, at this point, and it was like, okay, not much has happened, replied to people, and then finally watched the film. So actually yesterday was a fairly easygoing day. So, what have you been up to yesterday, Jess?
Oh, so I did a little bit of gardening, which I haven't done any gardening for a while. So I did some weeding, and that was nice. And it was outside, and it was sunny. So because I still tested positive, So yesterday I had yesterday I had a positive COVID test, which meant that I shouldn't really leave. But I was outside in the garden and it was absolutely lovely. But apart from that, I have been playing a lot of Sprawlopolis, which has been lots of fun. Sprawlopolis is probably my
games.
Yes, it's probably my new most favorite game right now. Yeah, because it's just so quick. It's so quick, and you can just, do one of them. And there was one where I think the 3 conditions I picked out were basically impossible. They basically contradicted each other. I think one was, you've got to have your industrial bits next to your residential bits, and then there was another which was you've got to have your industrial bits next to your commercial bits, and then the third one was you get minus points for any industrial bits. And I was like, well, there might be some way through, but it would be incredibly tricky. So I just did another one instead. And it was like, yes, it's so easy.
So it's one of those games where you're like, this is a terrible deal. I'm going to restart.
Exactly. Because it's so simple to do that. So yeah, recent highlights were weeding in the garden and playing Sprawlopolis.
That sounds lovely. And a quick hello to everyone else who's jumped in. Hello, Alex. It is lovely to see you. Hello, Timmy. I hope that you're well. And hello, Tom Cauldron, another lovely person who I met at Aircon. I met loads of people here at Aircon. I saw Tom, I saw Alex, I saw...
It's the Aircon crew.
I saw you.
Yes, I was there. That's where I caught COVID.
And Alex says, wow, that's such a troll for my last thing. And yes, after doing it, I decided that it's not right if there's only one of these. There needs to be at least 3. I said 3 because, and so...
Yeah, 3 is a good number.
Because also that's the number of possible legs and bodies, so I can show all of them. There will be one head that gets missed out, but hey-ho, it'll probably be the round one. And did I try the local wine during my holiday? I did not drink any alcohol, actually. But yes, I do feel refreshed. The other thing is that I did actually get a note from my friend who, their friend's friend, was selling a bike. And I was like, oh, maybe I want to buy their bike. But then I'd have to go to Stratford. And I don't know if I like the bike, so I'm not willing to make that trip and then find out that I don't actually like the bike. So I think today I'm going to spend a couple of hours. Unfortunately, needs to be done. It feels unproductive, but I am going to go to the bike shops and check out the bikes and just pay for a brand new bike, because as long as it doesn't get stolen, it is going to last me a while. And Dutch Yoda says, I'm waiting on Agropolis to combine with Sprawlopolis. And yes, I've heard many interesting things about Bropolis. I've heard nothing bad about it. What is your thoughts, Yoda? Presumably you've played all of these, and if anyone else has any recent highlights, feel free to share. But other than that, let's talk about brilliant things. Brilliant things. What's a little thing which is brilliant? Because we're talking about emotional journeys, Jess, what has the most emotionally brilliant part of your Kickstarter so far been? Like the most brilliant moment? What's been a brilliant moment? You can list multiple.
Brilliant moments. So that moment right at the start where people pile in and go, yes, I'm going to pledge, that's a brilliant moment. That's great. There are also moments when you're not expecting that many backers, but suddenly you do have them. So we've had a couple of little upticks in our graph. Graphs themselves are brilliant, by the way. Graphs are brilliant. I love graphs. But we've had a couple of little upticks, and one of them was for International Women's Day, which was not that surprising because we're making a game which is about many women in a library. The other little uptick we had was just after Aircon. So while we were at Aircon, we had a QR code which people could scan, and it would take them directly to the to the thing, which was great. It was a custom one, so we could tell how many people went through it. However, there was no signal inside the convention center, so basically we had a lot of people taking a photo of this QR code. Now, I'm pretty certain, because we got no results from it. Well, no, possibly one. So I'm pretty certain that when you refreshed the page or something, that it wouldn't do it. That the QR, that the special link that told you they'd come from there was broken. That sounds quite likely. Or in fact, maybe it took them to there, but then, because they'd had to go outside to get signal. But anyway, we got quite an uptick directly after Aircon. So, the Sunday night. And I suspect that was people who were like, oh, right. They'd seen all the things at Aircon. They'd made sort of judgments about which of these various things they actually wanted. And then they decided that they were going to back us. And it was like, yay. So, yes, those little uptakes are brilliant. I love them.
That is a lovely thing. And it sounds like the consistent thread here is about having an expectation and in it being surpassed.
Yeah, absolutely. But I would like to say that graphs are also brilliant. We did talk about graphs. Yes. Hello. Hi, the other Jess. Getting data, because it can be too much. And I know that some people are very, some people feel very constrained by all of that. There is a lot of sort of, looking at it and go, oh yes, there it is. I've been looking at these graphs quite a lot.
Graph specifically.
So I look at KickTrack, and I also look at the Backer Tracker, Backer Kit. Backer Kit, I think, might be slightly more accurate for what we might get at the end. But also, of course, looking at the graph on the dashboard. If it's just data
on what's happened so far, then it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, absolutely. But of course on there you've got one which is sort of a trend and one which is, the projection, and those are fun to look at. The other thing is looking at the actual graph which is on the dashboard, and you'll have one and I've got one, and they're all, they all look quite different. And we found that it hasn't, yes, obviously it's gone, the amount has gone down per day, because it's mid-campaign. But it's really interesting to just see some days it goes right down. The 17th of March, for example, hardly anybody pledged, and I'm not entirely sure what was different about the 17th, apart from it being St. Patrick's Day. So it was just really interesting seeing how those days go. Aha,
and
that's
here
yours.
Is some that I'm happy to show. Obviously, I'm not going to scroll down so you see the names of the people, because for privacy reasons, that's not something that I should be showing. But I am a very open person, and so yes, we passed the goal on the first day. I was kind of expecting that. I mean, with £500, if we hadn't gotten there, then I would have... Actually, before we get into this, and I am going to listen to the stream elements, let me talk about my brilliant moments. Let me say that my brilliant moments, I agree with you. Yes, I think that for me, it's when you are getting more than you expect, which does kind of lead to the problem that if you're expecting a lot, then it's going to be continual disappointment. But then on the other side, I find that every time people actually give a comment, that is always brilliant. And that's the thing that actually boosts me. So yesterday, actually between yesterday going to bed and right now, I've got, I want to say, 7 backers, which is fairly decent for that kind of time that I am basically in the mid-campaign lull. I'm not expecting it to shoot up until I get to the final 7 days. And that is lovely. And I saw someone who had made a large pledge, and it's like, oh, wow, they really believe in me and are putting in extra money just to support me. That's super lovely.
That is lovely.
Actually, the comments when people say, hey, I am backing this because I've had so much fun with your whimsical creatures, or hey, I'm backing this, I think that you're doing great stuff, or someone says, someone says, out of these 2 options, that's the thing that I would rather have, because it shows me that they actually care. Do you know what I mean? And the money, don't get me wrong, the money really matters. Like the fact that someone's giving me, like someone gave me £50 extra money, I need to actually check in with them that that's what they're wanting to do. But it's like they really support me. They bought like 10 copies of the game and then paid for another 10 without actually doing the add-on. I definitely up to like a maximum of 100, so it's not like they had hit any limits or anything, unless Kickstarter automatically puts it at 10. I don't think they would have, but like I'm assuming either way, it's like a really big, wow, this person really believes in me. That's fantastic. But it's when the people spend time and energy kind of saying, obviously it takes time and energy to back, it takes time and energy to get that money, don't get me wrong, but do you get what I mean? It's kind of like, it feels even more personal when someone if someone just votes and says, oh, these 2 options sound interesting, I'll go for that one. That's like, wow, that's, here I am at this moment, I've put this up in the world. It is a point of vulnerability, let's be honest. You have this thing and you've got a sense of how people like it. You've been playtesting. You get people either enjoying it or not enjoying it. And hopefully if your target audience isn't enjoying it, you don't take it to Kickstarter at that point. Hopefully you've done your due diligence. There are obviously terrible Kickstarters, but I don't have people who do those on my show. And so, you know, I'm not saying we've got blockbuster Kickstarters, but we do have what I would call well-crafted, meaningful Kickstarters that are thoughtfully made, that there's been thought and love put into the game, a lot of energy, a lot of checking in already with the people. But then that final moment, you've got this vulnerability. So for someone to say, oh, this sounds interesting, and to actually say it with words, that feels brilliant. I think that's my favorite moments.
Yeah, no, that is nicely said. Yeah, that is a lovely moment when people are like, oh, yes, I like this or I like that. And particularly, you know, when the campaign goes on and you're adding in things, you know, as we both do, you know, so you're doing all those designs that you did and people are like, oh, I like that. I like this. And, you know, what about this? It's all just, yeah, just having that validation, you know, that they really like the thing you're making.
And yeah, I think you can have too much of a good thing, because for sure, like if you covered me in a billion radishes right now, I would probably get crushed to death. But that aside, let's crack with our main topic. And we don't have infinite time. We do have to finish up by 11 today. But if anyone has any comments, questions, obviously feel free to follow, but please, I do like this to be an interactive show. And whilst I'm not going to respond to every single thing or answer every single question, we will try and get through everything. So I had some questions to get us started. Are crowdfunding projects all-consuming?
They are quite all-consuming. I mean, not completely. There are other things I'm doing, but yeah, they take over a lot of your sort of, your emotional, mental, what's going on in the back. So yeah, they do take up a lot of sort of stress space, I suppose, and it's that constant looking and going, oh, what's next? Have we got another backer? And trying to find a new way to present it to people, because we've gone for a long Kickstarter. We've gone for a month-long Kickstarter, which is, it's not long.
It's average. I think yours is normal length. Mine is just short.
Yours is short.
Because I am planning to do a lot of games over the next year. I am embarking upon this project of Bezzy bargain bags. I am planning to have, well, it depends if you count the different graphical variations as multiple. But even if you don't count a game about quickly grabbing creatures that are totally different and counting your beetroots as being different to a game about quickly grabbing creatures that are totally different and counting your radishes, I will probably have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 Bezzy bargain bags for UK Games Expo this year. And by the time it gets to August, like a year after my first Bezzy bargain bag, I'm expecting to have maybe 8 total, so 7.
That's quite
over
a lot.
The course of a year. Yes, it is. And I'm aware that this is potentially a lot of times to ask people, hey, please support me, please give me stuff. And at the same time,
it's only a small thing you're asking for. That's the difference.
It is a £5 plus £3 postage. And if people want to pay £1 to get the digital print and play, that's totally fine. I very much encourage that. In fact, that's all I allowed if you're outside of the UK. And for the next one, I might explore again international postage. We'll see how pre-Kickstarter stuff goes. Because frankly, if it's going to go gangbusters, then it makes sense for me to capitalize on the international audience. If I'm going to get, if it's not going to be that much, if 100 people from outside of the UK want it, it doesn't make sense for me to do an entirely new printing in the EU and send it to them from there. I might as well just say, well, this is the price. It is extortionate. Since 2 years ago, USA has become World 4 in the UK, which means that it's ridiculously expensive to send. I honestly wouldn't recommend it. But if you really want it, these are the prices. Let me know what you think. And let them make the choice. But yeah, sorry. So talking of length, but in terms of all-consuming, yes, the longer that you do it, I think maybe you can feel like you can step back a wee bit. If you've got another person, I feel like you can step back a wee bit. And it's also how much do you care? How much do you feel like you're letting yourself down sometimes?
So I did a couple of very short, or what I thought were very short Kickstarters. None of them were the 3-day ones that you did. You did one that was 3-day, I think, Bez?
Yes.
Yeah. So I did the 2 Kickstarters I had for cards, the Christmas cards and then the Valentine's Day cards. Were I think one was longer than the other. I think one was sort of 12 days or something, and the other was 9 days. And with both of those, it was much easier, and it was sort of there was that quicker.
Less all-consuming to you?
I think it did, because when it's been going on for a while, then you sort of think, it kind of, the history takes up space, I suppose. Also, somehow it builds up and it builds up. Whereas if it's just there for 9 days, then it's a little bit easier. Not hugely easier, to be honest, because it's still a really intense, quick thing. But it's all difficult, I think is what we're saying.
For me, because I came off the back of my most successful Kickstarter ever, in terms of money, in terms of profit, in terms of how quickly I did it, in terms of number of backers, in terms of everything. It was my most successful ever. And it was like a super short one. I don't think that made it more successful, because people who were signing up for it didn't know how long or short it was going to be. Clearly, there was something about the game itself that really resonated with people.
Yeah.
But, and that's a slightly separate conversation, but I do think that because I was trying to get my expectations to be realistic, but with all the people saying, "Oh, you don't know, it could," no, it's not going to do equally well. But then people keep saying that, and then part of you starts to believe this, and it's actually a lie, and then that's not great, because then when it doesn't do as well as your previous one, then you start to wonder, what am I doing wrong? What could I be doing differently?
Yeah, no, there's definitely something about what the expectations are, and I think, you know, keeping it to what you've actually seen there on the ground rather than what other people have seen. You know, we had a lot of people who were saying, "Oh yeah, you know, Labyrinth is going to do really well," and it's like, well, hang on, you know, define really well, you know, because we're doing slightly better than we expected, but of course our expectations have now changed. You know, so we're now at the stage where the real stretch goal for us would be getting 1,000 backers. You know, because we're on 758 backers.
Don't get me wrong, if you've done like 900 backers,
absolutely,
that's still
it'll be
really
brilliant.
well. And I think that, look, you've spent a long time on this thing. There's multiple of you. You've spent money on everything. And when I say, oh, it's done better than anything I've done, but it's all contextual. Like, absolutely. I've not spent quite the amount of preparation and work on one single project that to say this is my thing for the next 2 years. Everything that I did, it was like, okay, this is really meaningful to me right now. And even though I'm working on other games right now, because after In a Bind, I realized that's actually trying to work on just one game at a time, for me, leads to depression. I need to do other things. I need to be willing to do other things. I need to schedule time to say, yes, I'm going to playtest, and not feel guilty about it. And even take a day to say, I'm going to prototype other games. But I do really, really care about everything that I put up on Kickstarter. And if something messes up, like with Categorical, I know that there's people upset about it, but I would be astonished if there was anyone more upset than me, frankly. But having said all that, it wasn't expected to be the only thing for like 2 years in the way that you've built up this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You know, because this has been the big project, and there have been some other things on the sides, you know, and the cards have been on the sides, and but this has been the big thing. And to be absolutely honest, this is definitely as big as I would ever want it to get. You know, I'm feeling a little bit like, actually, this is, you know, that a game this big is perhaps not so much, you know, what I want to be involved in the future.
This big, it's as lovely. In this many moving parts to manufacture and everything. Yeah,
this, this, you know, so this is a relatively straightforward sort of, you know, gateway game, but, you know, but that's only compared with some of the much more complicated games out there, you know. And I'm actually like, I think going forward, then I'd be much more interested in things which are really simple games. You know, the Christmas cards, you know, are a really interesting thing to do. And I'm like, oh, you know, can I dig down into that? But it has been really fascinating learning all of the different bits of it. Because I did some of these things with Disarm the Base, but because this is on a bigger scale, you know, because there are more people involved, you know, more backers, you know, because there's a team of us doing it, you know, then it feels like it's a bit of a different beast almost.
100%. And a quick shout out to Jamie from Ragworks Games, who says, you both look really happy. Glad the Kickstarters are going well. Thank you very much. And Alex asks, is it like gambling in terms of dopamine feel?
I don't think I really know. Do
you not gamble enough?
So I'm trying to work out how much gambling I've actually done. Whether I've done anything that might be considered gambling. I suppose it's partly a cultural thing, coming from a background where gambling is just not done. That I'm like, well, do I do anything that's gambling? I don't know. I feel quite uncomfortable with a lot of the, with things that are complete chance. Gambling for jelly beans. I've gambled I've played poker for jelly beans quite a lot.
I have dropped my coins into those things where it does that.
Yes, I've done that as well.
And I've done like small sideshow events, but I've never done anything where I felt like I was going to potentially win more than £10, except for once. So,
okay, I'm going to tell
you a very short story. So basically, I've played poker, I'm going to say competitively, by which I don't mean professionally or anything. I just mean, everyone was saying, okay, we're going to really try to win. I've played it competitively twice. One time, there may have been some inebriation, and then halfway through the game, everyone was giggling, and then I found out someone was stealing my chips with their foot. And I got really annoyed because that seemed to be a contravention of what we were there to do.
Yeah.
Afterwards, it's like, it wasn't like a big deal or anything. And anyway, but then the second time I played poker seriously, everyone else puts in 20 quid. And I said, I don't feel comfortable with that. And someone said, oh, you'll feel so different when you actually play it. It's actually plays differently when you actually have some money at the stake. Here, I'll pay for you. You can enter. And so they paid for my cover fee. So the idea was that there wasn't a house or anything. It was a group of people. So I think 5 people all put in £20, except for me. And my thing was covered by someone else. And then the winner would take £100. So the person, and I don't feel like the experience was any different for me, because I'm maybe quite good at ascribing artificial value to things. Like if I play a game and I say I'm playing to win, I am actually playing to win. If I play a game and it's like, I'm going to let you take back moves, sure, I might not do that in a tournament, but if we all agree, okay, this is a friendly tournament, there doesn't need to be any money at stake. It just needs to be, okay, this is a competitive match, and we agree what the rules are. Like if you come to one of my 2 p.m. events, there's no money involved, there's no entry fee, and I want everyone to go away feeling super happy. That's more important than the little prizes that I give at the end. And I say little prizes, but with the book, you could get some. And when Seize the Power comes out, that will be like, I wonder if everyone will just be going for that, because that will be the big box game. But anyway, the point is that if someone said, oh, I made a mistake, can I get a taxi back? It would be like, no, you can't. This is a 2 p.m. event. And sure, if it was a demo game, maybe if it's a small child, I would let them take it back. But no matter how small a child you are, no matter your disabilities, if you're at the prize event, you don't get any takesy backsies or any, you only made one mistake, let's let you off. No, that doesn't happen. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah. For me, so just while you were saying that, I was thinking, actually, this is sparking off thoughts in me. For me, I think that it feels less like a game that you're doing that and more like a performance, which actually made me think about your stock taking yogi in a bind thing. Guru. Yeah, exactly. But I was, so I've done a fair number of, let's rephrase that. I've done an awful lot of small local pantomimes and things, not for years and years, but when I was a child, I did an awful lot of them, local pantomime. I was always one of the people on there, never the star, etc. And, the local Amdram things, lots of things like that. It does feel an awful lot like being on a stage, actually. Running a Kickstarter campaign does feel an awful lot like you're in a performance, because that you've just got to keep going. Sometimes there are bits where you're like, I think I fluffed my lines there, but never terribly badly. You know, there are bits where you come off at the end and you're like, you know what? You know, last night's performance was better than this one, and you know, I could have done a bit more on that, and we could have raised that.
I definitely
but you've
see
also
that.
got the
other important
adrenaline.
thing is that it's not purely random. It's about what you did. I mean, look, there is a lot of chance. Don't get me wrong. There's chance in the fact that, well, maybe chance is a strong word to put into it, but yeah, there is some level of chance in that. For In a Bind, Maggie Rostron, who I still ascribe, and Maggie and Liz and Miquette, my lovely friends, and Miquette and Liz encouraging me to keep going, and Maggie sharing it with lots of friends, and then me getting like almost 100 backers on the final day for a total of 173 after a 58-day campaign. That's kind of crazy, and that's kind of astounding. But it's, at this point, sure, there might be a bit of chance and indeterminacy about who is actually able to do a review, how things go, whether someone sees a post, you know, on Twitter or Facebook or not. Like maybe for the noises, people playing it at KCON just really inspired people to love it. But then it's also what you did, right? It's what
absolutely.
It's stuff that how you promoted it. It's how you wrote that page, and that's what makes it almost higher stakes, I would say, than gambling, for me at least.
Yeah, because I think there's something there about the fact that gambling generally only involves you, your money, the other players at the table, and their money. Whereas there's more involved in this. You know, there's more involved in this. And that seems kind of important to me somehow. Anyway,
so let's make sure that we get to the other questions. How can we make sure our other obligations don't get missed? I don't have a lot of other obligations, but I did. The annoying thing is that I didn't lock up my bike properly on Wednesday, and it got stolen. It feels like that was partially because of me. I think the key thing to remember, like, that was a momentary distraction, but generally I think the key thing is to write a schedule. Make sure you do your other things and schedule. Don't feel like you have to always look at the Kickstarter. I understand, okay, if you want to...
It's so tempting, though. It's there.
Whenever you're having a walk, but at least try and take, you know, make it a few hours until you next check it. That's how I would recommend making sure that other obligations don't get missed. Jess, you've got more obligations than me.
Oh, there's definitely something about making sure that you don't spend too long checking it. You know, so I tend to, you know, to check it on a very regular basis. I probably check it more than most people. But I tend to just be like, right, check it, done, go do something else. But that is partly about it just sort of taking over your life to a certain extent. Removing all other obligations. Who's actually got the ability to remove all other obligations for a whole, you know, few weeks or whatever? So, yeah.
I mean, the thing is that I am in an incredibly privileged situation because I don't have family. This is my full-time, what I focus on. So, in theory, I am that rare person that everyone's going to be jealous of or envious of and say, yeah, Bez can do anything. And that's true. And then that gets into the other points, which is how do you make sure that you're healthy and happy, that you do the other things. And I think
don't
the key
go
thing...
to aircon. Well, do go to aircon. Don't get COVID from aircon. That makes you not healthy.
But it makes you happy, right?
It makes me very happy. Actually, yes. Do go to aircon for the happiness. Don't get COVID there.
If you had known that you were going to get COVID, would you have gone?
Yeah, I think I still would have gone, actually. Yeah. You know, because, you know, for me, this particular strain hasn't been too bad. Probably because I'm triple vaxxed and because I was wearing a mask, you know, at least most of the time there. And, you know, and so it probably made it less worse than it could have been. But this is the first time I've got it in 2 years, so that's probably a fairly good going, I suppose.
Congratulations. I think that for me, one thing that I could be better at is just making sure that I do actually get outside each day. And on making sure that there are other things to distract me, because ironically, if you don't have any other obligations or you don't have anything else that you have to do, maybe you lost your job whilst doing a Kickstarter for In the Bind. Maybe you haven't got, I don't know, like just that was actually truly what happened.
Oh,
and
no.
Then probably turned out for the best. It wasn't something that I enjoyed. And anyway, I don't want to get into that story.
No.
But
old history.
The point, maybe you don't have anything else going on. Maybe you're lucky enough that you can take time off, whatever. But there should be other things that you can focus on. Other things that you can say, yes, this is what I'm going to do. Things that actually take you hours to do. Maybe that is something relating to the Kickstarter, like drawing stuff. Maybe, but ideally it should be something completely separate. Going for walks and
making cakes, eating
going
cakes,
for play tests, watching a film, scheduling time so that you do actually get a little bit of exercise. So you get a little bit of time when you're, like last night when I watched an entire film. It was called The Adam Project, and I really like things about time travel. Honestly, the film was mediocre. I'm not, like, if you want to spend some time and you really like time travel films, the romantic aspects was a bit much, and it felt like it was taking too many cinematic cues from Star Wars. It felt a bit kind of...
wow. Yeah.
But anyway, the point is that having that, doing something completely different, even though, like, yeah, and having a big meal, possibly stuffing yourself, having a long walk, these are the kinds of things that it's good to make time for, even if it's just a quick walk around the block.
Exactly. There's a magpie out my window. I'm going to make time for the magpie. Oh no, magpie's flown away now.
The final question that I had was, how much time should we really be spending on the crowdfunding project? Because it is so tempting to feel, I need to spend all my waking hours on it, especially if you're me, especially if you've decided this is what I'm doing in life and I don't have a family or anything. And then but yeah, how much time should you be spending?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it depends, it does depend, what other things you've got on there, because they're... Because it's also whether you're thinking about, whether it's this crowdfunding project or whether it's a next game, because just focusing on one thing does narrow you a bit. And so, saying, oh, actually, what am I going to be doing after this? And what does this lead on to? And what other game ideas are pushing at my mind? Because I think most games designers would probably be saying, okay, well, while I'm working on this, there are all these other ideas I have which are out there and are sort of clamoring to be let in. So I think that it's probably important to spend a certain amount of time letting them do stuff. So I'd say that it's that of the time which is allocated for game stuff, and that might be most of your day, then if you could say, well, I'm going to spend, I don't know, let's just pull some numbers out of thin air. Maybe I'm going to spend a third of my time, doing this Kickstarter campaign. Maybe I'm going to spend about a third of my time doing other things that involve games, which are not necessarily this game. Then maybe I'm going to spend about a third of my time doing some other stuff. Now, I mean, today, for example, today has turned out to be a really busy day for me because I've got some other stuff which is completely non-game related. The policing bill is back in the House of Lords later this morning, for example, which is completely not game related. Then, it
could be game related. We could make a game about it.
I think at some point I would like to make a game. I was talking to Riley Stock about this and saying, right, what we need to do, we need to make a game which is about whips in the House of Lords. rounding up all the MPs.
BDSM.
You don't whip the people. No, they're the people who go around and they round up the MPs and they make them vote in the right way. And we could have a game where you're all being devious and nasty whips in a cartoon nastiness kind of way. A kind of, a wacky races Muttley type, way, if that makes sense. And you're running around trying to get the MPs into the various lobbies and you're locking them in the toilets and you're doing all sorts of silly and ridiculous things, which are, nasty in a cartoon way.
After July, I would be really up for brainstorming and working on that with you. I say after July because that's when Seize the Power has to be finished. That's the time frame that we've been given for the end of.
In that case, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yes. It could be an interesting game about politics and corruption, but in a really silly way.
So, disastrously as a Tory, says Tom.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let me really quickly say, so, yes, Alex, there's not going to be any miniature skirmishes games or legacy versions. And we had something about a Bezzy bargain bag box bundle, which, no, that's probably not going to happen, but ask me to explain it on a future stream if you want me to explain why.
Let's put that in the calendar and come back to it at a future date.
So we've got a couple of things. So firstly, Alex wants to know, I will make a note of that and I will write that down, that's a good film to watch at some point. Do you do any time blocking for particular tasks around the Kickstarter or for management in general? I do have a calendar where I say, okay, these are the things that I want to go out. And I've actually, yesterday, I could have done it much earlier, but yesterday I finally scheduled a tweet that say there's 48 hours left, there's 24, 12, and 3 hours left. And I've got a little bit things where it says, okay, these are places I want to promote. I don't want to promote everywhere on the same day. And so I've got 3 places left to promote, plus 2 places where I'm allowed to promote multiple times. So I do have a general thing. But for me, generally, the way I work is just going there, seeing what needs to be done. And it is maybe more reactive than it should be. How about you, Jess?
Very similar to you, Bez. Quite reactive, sometimes quite spontaneous. There's a fair amount of sort of noting down at the beginning, the places, which we can go, and also the various people we want to talk to, then kind of going, oh, hang on, we haven't done that yet, and then rushing off to do it. So, we're probably more reactive and more spontaneous than we should be, but it's working okay at the moment.
I think we have time for one more question. I'm going to call this the last one. Do you feel you have to constantly market the Kickstarter to keep up momentum? Is there any etiquette about how often you should tweet the link to your campaign? I'm going to say that doing it on your own space, Twitter, you can do it a lot more than on someone else's space, because if it's on a Facebook group, you need to check that it's okay with the people, check the rules. You don't want to overdo it. But if it's on your own page, well, frankly, people who are following you, they might not see it. Like, they might have not checked Twitter for a week. So I think you want to be tweeting actually multiple times because of the way that Twitter works. And for Instagram, I think that it's fair to have at least one story or Instagram post like once a day if you are generally active on Instagram like I am. And on Facebook, on my business Facebook group, I kind of copied across the Instagram posts. On my personal Facebook group, I made one post at the start, and I'm going to make another post later on. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. I don't know. But yeah, that's how I feel about it. How do you feel, Jess?
Same. So again, quite similar. Yes, I do feel I have to constantly market the Kickstarter, but it's finding a new way to do it. So Twitter, then I'm very chatty on Twitter. I'm found mostly on Twitter, so I'm very much a kind of like, getting out a new thing. So it's often constantly finding a new thing to tweet about. So for example, right now, we have 12 backers from Birmingham and we have 12 backers from Brighton. So I've been saying, hey, we've got 12 from each. Who's going to be the next? That sort of thing. We've
Who's
also
going to be unlucky number 13? Give in to triskaidekaphobia.
I know. Well, we've also got, for example, we currently have more backers from the UK than from the US, which we've had, throughout it, but the US is slowly catching up. So it's a kind of like, when is the US going to overtake? So there's things like that, which I'm sure most people are not tweeting out their marketing, their
That's
community
a really
stats.
Interesting angle. I am going to definitely start
doing
that.
Now. Yeah. But it is things like that.
The other thing I really liked from you was the time-lapse video of how something was made.
Oh, yes.
Because that's a really nice thing that other people can, retweet. It's fun to look at. It is really content marketing. And I think that if you have a lot of art in your game, if you're doing the art yourself, doing some more art, you can say, hey, look at this new art. Hopefully people...
This is how it was made, because those are fun. The time-lapse things are really fun. But there's also things where, making little videos or, there's something about the solo mode. And I was showing how, we had this, this move I was nicknaming the trolley dash monster smash move, where you pick up the trolley on the way. And it's like, those are kind of fun things. But yes, it's very difficult to work out how often are you going to post in various Facebook groups? Because, of course, most of them you're only supposed to post in once or twice, or you've got to email them. You've got to say, well, not email, you've got to message and say, well, what's appropriate here. And, of course, there are some groups that I'm really part of, like the Board Game Trading and Chat UK group. Then there are some other groups where, I've been in there and I've definitely interacted, solo players, for example, but I wouldn't say that I'm definitely not there every week. So yeah, it's a delicate balance, I think. It's different for every Facebook group.
Yeah, and you want to check in. If we've got any more questions, and I see there's another question, but please send it to my Discord. Ask there, and I will happily answer more questions on future shows. But at this point, we do have to finish up. And so I'm going to turn it around very, very quickly. Question of the day. Here's a final question to you before you go on our way. My question to you is, have you run a Kickstarter? How did you feel overall? And for everyone, if you are currently running a Kickstarter, think back to your previous Kickstarter. How did you feel overall? Did you feel happier or sadder because of it? What were the prevailing emotions? I would say that for my previous Kickstarter, I felt astonishment, happiness, jubilation, triumph, and then accomplishments. I felt a lot of things. It was brilliant. It was an amazingly successful Kickstarter.
There's been quite a lot of relief with this one, I think, actually. Relief that, we've been doing it for so long and it's suddenly like, oh, actually, people do want to get it. Relief when we passed the goal, because we passed it on sort of fairly early on day 4, I think. And it was like, oh, excellent, right. That's really good that we've done it now. But of course, with everything, because we're getting closer to, to a higher number of games, we're probably going to make 1,500 games. So, with every backer, it's like, quick, it's getting the price
seems
down.
Like most of them are spoken for, which is amazing.
Yeah, well, I mean, so far we've actually had people put their names down for about 710 games or something so far. Oh. Which, considering we've still got a week and a bit left. Yes, yeah, across everyone. We've still got
moments when you were, say 7, I was like, 7 games? Sorry. Anyway, but
no, across everyone.
It should have been quite a bit for you, because your game is actually quite an expensive game. But do you think that you will continue to go to conventions after this as Dissent Games and bring out more things as a collective as Dissent Games?
Absolutely. We have... There will probably, we'll probably think about yes, each game is £3,000. I think we're we've got another few ideas about largish games. And by largish games, I mean actual games in a box. This might be considered a smallish game, but we definitely want to be doing more of the postcards. Yes, a library. Okay, when we go to Expo, we'll bring a whole library with us. Maybe. Possibly.
Okay, so to finish up, over to you. What are you up to? You can share, but only if you want to And as always, if you're watching after the fact, then please do feel free to respond, letting me know what you think about the Kickstarter. I might actually make that quick tweets, ask people, highlight. But what are you up to today? I am going to try and get a bike sorted. I'm going to make a Kickstarter update, do a couple of posts, send a couple of messages. Might have a Polish rulebook coming soon, which is quite cool. I mean, I don't know if anyone from Poland will actually benefit from it, but there's one person who said, hey, are you happy for me to make an official Polish rulebook? And I do know at least one other person who will be happy to read through it, even if they aren't willing to translate it. I'm sure they would be willing to read through it to make sure it doesn't say anything obscene or anything. So then I can confidently say, yes, these are the rules to the game, and it says what, even though I have no idea what Polish means. I guess I could put it through Google text, but if it was, really rubbish Polish, then I probably wouldn't want my name behind it either. But yeah, anyway, so that's exciting. Sending messages, sorting my bike, getting out, having a good day. I am excited to do stuff, drawing stuff. That's what I'm up to. What are you up to, Jess?
Watching a debate in the House of Lords. Not the actual House of Lords, watching the TV version of it. But yes, and I'll be tweeting about that in about 10 minutes probably. So
Vivan Me says, I can make a Pig Latin rulebook for you. You know what?
Always good.
You actually do that, then sure. That sounds funny.
We'll put it in our library. Yeah, we'll put it in our library with all the other stuff.
Jamie says, I'm planning a Regency-themed print and play roll and write. The only way I can do it is via Benny Sperling, who will deal with it all, taking it all on myself. Feels too scary and intimidating. But so Benny's going to be doing the Kickstarter, Jamie's doing the design. That sounds lovely. Yes, collaborate with people who do
absolutely
other bits that you can't. That sounds fantastic. So to recap and wrap up before we finish up, we talked about how the details matter. We talked about me getting annoyed by people saying it could have been better, it could be better, it could turn out better, because that's kind of taking away from your knowledge. We talked about the toxic positivity, well-intentioned, the brilliant bits were surpassing the expectations, the lovely start when people are diving in, the messages. We talked about how it can be all-consuming. We talked about the difference between a short campaign with a 58-day thing, with a short thing for little Christmas cards, with a normal-sized thing from Library Labyrinth, we talked about the intimidation and the frustration and the number of moving parts with a big, complex game. And there's more that can go wrong. And yeah, we talked about whether it's like gambling. We decided not really, but it is kind of like amateur drama where you're doing this performance and then you do get sometimes a lot of applause, sometimes you get good reviews, sometimes you get lovely messages, sometimes you even get flowers. I mean, that's never happened for me on a Kickstarter. I've never been given flowers, but as the first I'm not actually angling to get
first flowers. Time for everything.
But it definitely feels like what was your responsibility. We talked about making sure that if you can reduce your obligations, but obviously for most people this isn't possible. Even if you're me, make sure that you have time for other things. And we talked about, yes, you do try to do something every day and you do try to do a planning, but us two are both being very reactive. Is there anything else you want to say about this topic right now?
I think that was all covered. Yay!
Boom. So, for now, if you want to check me out, I am Stuff by Bez everywhere. Twitch, Instagram, YouTube, stuffbybez.com/Discord. This link will redirect you to my Discord channel, where feel free to suggest topics for future shows or whatever. Tomorrow we have Alan Paul on, which is going to be exciting. Thursday I will be doing something about my Kickstarter, I don't know what, and then in the evening I'll have an hour-long celebration as it finishes. Feel free to share and spread the word. But Jess, where do you like to be found?
Find me mainly on Twitter. Twitter is where I hang out most. Go to Descent Games on Twitter. But you could also go to Facebook, search for Descent Games. There's a page there, but you can also search for Library Labyrinth, which is a community. That's a group. So come and join one of those. We are on Instagram. We don't do a huge amount on Instagram, but we are there. We have sort of a post every few days. But you could also go to librarylabyrinth.com to find out the latest stuff about Library Labyrinth. So come and find us on any of those places.
That does sound lovely. And what I'm thinking is that there is basically, at this point, one thing left to say. It's sad times, but we already know that it's going to happen. So if you're on Twitch, then please do feel free to copy-paste the message to... I'm going to raid today Jenna Music, who's a lovely British musician playing lovely tunes. For now, to everyone who wants to skedaddle, including Jess, lots of love, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jess, for being here. Sorry I'm keeping you late. Thank you, everyone, for being fantastic. Lots of love, and bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is the goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Rob. Bye, Josie. Bye, Alex. Bye, Jess.